just so that we can also think about not only what we're talking about, but how we talk about it. Because part of what we do is we have to think about how effective we are when we're talking to people. That's something that, as educators, we all try to do, I hope. So, and I actually try to do that.
That's cute. Oh, that's cute. I love filmmaking.
One of the things that we can address kind of generally on a tour like this is the garden itself and the history of the garden and how it kind of came about and how the garden was an extension of the architecture and that in actually as early as 1969 when the collection was being contributed to the Smithsonian, there already was a plan for a garden based on Hirshhorn's own garden at Round Hill. So all of this is very familiar to you. Round Hill was about 22 acres. It was about, I believe, I'm going to have to look at my notes when it comes to numbers. About 144 sculptures on that. Originally there was a plan to make this 3 acres, with the garden actually extending all the way over to the National Sculpture Garden and connecting it. There was also this idea of a reflective pool. All of that happened, or did not happen, because people felt that the idea of the mall was being interrupted by it. So, partly based on a critic kind of responding to these plans, the idea of running the garden parallel to the mall as opposed to intersecting it and submerging it. It's still about 2.5 acres that our sculpture has, but generally, let me look. I think it's. Yes, that's counting what's up here. Originally, there was 6,600 works contributed by Hirshhorn, and 2,650 were sculptures. So generally, there's usually a lot less sculptures out here. I would say there's probably about 100 at the most, maybe 60. And these sculptures, of course, vary and they rotate and all of that. So we have a lot to choose from when we're talking to the visitors. The one thing I like to think about is to give a question to visitors at the beginning. So that information you can give to people at the beginning, or you can withhold that information because by withholding information, you allow them to understand how much you would like them to participate. So if you just started up with a question to talk a little bit about, we have, 2,650 sculptures that were originally donated to us, and now we're growing it. We're growing it every year.
How many? 2,600.
This will all be in notes that I can send you, so you don't have to take notes if you don't want to. Yeah, I know sometimes it feels good too, so I understand. So there is sculpture in this museum, but there's sculpture outside. What is it about a sculpture garden? Why look at sculpture outside?
The lighting.
The weather, the atmosphere effects.
So atmosphere effects, change of light. Anything else? What other things? Just looking around.
Setting. They fit into the landscape.
And it fits into the landscape. Okay. What are you thinking?
Too big.
You're thinking that's pretty cool. Okay. What else?
Relationship to the architecture that surrounds it.
So we can look around and we can see that there's a relationship to it. And then sometimes you'll see that some artists don't want to make a relationship to their environment. So one of the things too about looking at sculpture is that we have to kind of move around and use our bodies to get around. Well, sculptures in some ways are sharing, especially when they're outside, they're sharing the same space that we navigate. So that's kind of an interesting thing for us to think about too. And the idea of sculpture gardens goes way back to ancient Greek times, where sculpture was used, even further than that, we can look at the pyramids and things like that. But the interesting thing about public sculpture is that it interacts with the world in a way that's very different than perhaps the gallery. And that interaction is more in our world in a different sort of way, without the container of the museum. So thinking about those kinds of things, we can also think about how sculpture is used. Sculpture was used for religious purposes. Other ways you could think about sculpture being used? Education. Political. Can you tell me about how sculpture is used educationally?
People who are not aware of how the body is made, they look at the nude and figure things out.
Okay. So interesting is kind of like a, yeah, educational, I got it. That's good. And you were saying political. How has sculpture
Propaganda.
propaganda? Okay.
Well, I guess it all falls under propaganda. Patriotism
Okay.
and propaganda.
It also tells a story.
So there's a story, and that story can be a political story, it can be an educational story, it can be a religious story. These stories, huh? And historical, yeah. So we're in a land, I mean really, Washington D.C. is a land of monuments, sculptures, things that have political, spiritual, social, educational, all these reasons for them. And when we look at the sculpture garden, it's an interesting thing for us to think about, just as an underwriting question, about what the function is here. Okay? So let's start our tour by looking over at Jeff Koons across the way. And I will help you with this.
Oh, now we're
I'm so
going.
glad to see that we're sharing. Okay, you need this.
Hold
right?
for
You have to hold on to that.
Don't drop it.
Oh, these aren't his?
No. Ben is sharing.
You doing okay with that? Yeah.
This wasn't a site-specific piece, was it? We just required that.
It's actually a larger version of a smaller piece, so I'm not sure if the commission's going to. It's not something
Last night I saw Design for the It was wonderful. It was very well done.
So this is a work by a more contemporary artist in terms of our collection, Jeff Koons. And I'm actually going to talk about this a little bit here, and then we'll return back to it. Because I think one of the things that we're going to find with a lot of these works is because sculpture is in the same space as us, and based on what Betty has said, there's an educational aspect, which is that the human body seems to be kind of a subject that sculptors return to a lot, or at least the human scale, or somehow, especially in sculpture gardens, we get a sense of the connection to our body. This is an interesting piece to start with and probably end with. So before I tell you anything about it, tell me a little bit about it. Okay, so we're noticing the material, the stainless steel. Other things that you notice about it. But it's interesting that the first thing that you noticed was the materials. Is that the first thing everyone else noticed?
Well, it's the contrast on material with the subject matter is what I think is very funny.
So let's come back to the material and what he says about the material, and tell me a little bit about the subject matter. What you guys are noticing. Huh? He's a peddler. Okay. But there's a yeah. Okay.
And it's like what, 17th century subject matter?
It's an 18th century subject matter. Well, actually, no. I see 19th century is written here. So, but the subject matter has gone through the history of Munster, which is the city that this was made for. It was originally commissioned for the Munster Sculpture Fair around this time, which I think is 1987. And before this, Jeff Koons had made these two sculpture projects that are known. One is called Banality, and the other one was called Statuary. Statuary was that he would take consumer items that were usually ones that had kind of an idea of kind of class connected to them, and then he would make them into stainless steel. And so he was having us look at kitsch objects, kind of like Andy Warhol, but having us look at these kitsch objects and thinking of them as
more precious.
More precious, yeah, because they're shiny. And in some ways, and then the Banality was taking, the Banality series was really exploring kind of popular culture, and in this way maybe folk culture, looking at this. So this actually is pretty close to a replica. I've looked at the actual sculptures based on it, and it's pretty similar, actually, strikingly similar to the one that's in Munster, which is in a square.